Good evening to you all televiewers, and thank you very much for joining us in tonight's edition. That is 19th of February 2020. It is a pleasure having you. And in tonight's edition, like we had Dr. Gideon on the Tuesday, we are having him again as a guest tonight. That is from Sweden, directly from Sweden. He is a senior university lecturer at the Department of Information Technology in Boras University, and given that he is versed with computational studies or devices, we are going to be looking at the poor coverage of internet in Africa. What could be the cause? Is it that there are some there's a political reason behind this, or is it that we lack the technological capabilities to actually have a quality good distribution of the internet? And we are naturally accompanied by Mange Venatius. You could equally watch us live on Facebook through that site that just appeared on your screen. Good evening to you, Dr. Gideon View once more, and it is our pleasure having you again for the second time.
Good evening, Vanessa, and good evening to everybody here today, the televiewers. And it's my pleasure to be part of your program again to share my views when it comes to internet connection and the barriers that may face Africa as a whole. And to begin with, I start again by taking this time to reflect for a moment on the challenges that are facing us in Cameroon in particular, and specifically in the English-speaking Cameroon, and hope that by the end of this year we might have a taste of peace in this part of the country.
Actually hoping for that. Mange Venatius, it is a pleasure having you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Vanessa. Good evening, and good evening to our viewers, those watching us from Boya in the southwest region of Cameroon. I'm talking of Boya particularly. Remember what happened at the beginning of the week, that's like the last Sunday, in last Saturday night, breaking Sunday, in Lebialem in the southwest region, where some traditional rulers were, were killed, were killed. And like a doctor was saying, we pray that by the end of this year, we may know peace. Peace like the Archbishop of Bamenda, Andrew Nkea, cried out that we're already tired of war and we are thirsty of peace, Vanessa.
And indeed, we are thirsty of peace. Viewpoint is a debate program divided into two parts, the questions and later on the debate. Let us have the first part. Does poor internet coverage in Africa having any impact on the development of the continent? Doctor, you, yes or no?
Well, that was a very good question, and I think that that question doesn't need any further analysis to understand that the potential that Africa holds is highly being limited by the lack of internet infrastructure, by the lack of computational infrastructure for the African continent. We don't need to go far to see that the answer is yes. It has a massive limitation on what Africa could potentially be.
Doctor's response is yes. Mange Venatius.
I sit on the fence. I would have said no, but I'll sit on the fence, yes and no. Greater extent, yes.
Greater extent, yes. In the second question, could this poor coverage be attributed to poverty or lack of political will? Doctor.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting one. I think the driving force is the political will. If the political will is there, then there would be possibilities to find the technology would drive the coverage, and business models would be business models would arise that particularly address the unique challenges of Africa. Yes, political will first.
Mange Venatius?
Yes, I will still sit on the fence again. It is both political will and poverty.
Yes and no. Let us have the debate. Doctor, back to you. In the first question, you think that poor internet coverage in Africa has an impact on the development of the continent. So what could be some of those impacts or effects that the lack of internet has on our continent?
Vanessa, I wouldn't go far to cite some of the examples we already discussed in this program. In the previous edition on Tuesday, we talked about the impact it is having on online education, for example. And that, unfortunately, is not the only area where you could see the potential that the internet could create for a nation or for a continent such as Africa. It has to range from services to just the ability to access information that could change lives. Information could be about, in terms of, say, when there is a disaster, or information about what to do, how to access public services. The fact that we do not have enough coverage, the fact that our governments or our communities cannot be reached in the same way that we see in other parts of the world, is a major challenge because take the case of COVID, for example. How do you reach information to people in a way that would enable them to act on that information? How do people access government services? Just knowing the right questions to ask or the right doors to knock or way to access information, all of these are made easier if we had good internet coverage. You may also know that when you look at the world economy, we've gone from a product-oriented economy as a whole to a service-oriented economy. And most of these services, I would say, rely on the internet. You don't need to look far to see that the top companies in the world today, if you wish, call it the major cooperative organizations such as Google, such as Apple, such as Amazon, all of them have built their success on the presence of the internet. So yes, we could do a lot in Cameroon and in Africa if we only gave the tools. By the way, are the easiest tools that we can practice in classrooms, where we don't need to buy some chemicals. We just put the computer there and let the children play with it, and you see what comes out of it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon. You stay with us while we get the point of view of Manga Venatius and, of course, your reaction later on. Manga Venatius, you are standing on the fence, but to a greater extent, you think that the poor internet coverage in Africa has an impact on the development of the continent?
Yes, Vanessa, that's why I said I'm sitting on the fence, because it's like Africa never existed before the coming of the white man. But then Africa did exist before the coming of the white men. And when we're talking about the development of the continent in relation to the availability of internet connection, it's true. That's why I said I sit on the fence to a larger extent, yes. When you look at the economic development, like Doctor was saying, you would realize that the world is becoming what they call a global village, where you sit here and sell to somebody in Russia, you sit here, you sell to somebody in US, or you buy from a market in US. With this, if we are having a good internet connection, our economy will improve, certainly. Because in as much as our products home would be exposed to the world global market, we would be able to also, do the kind of sourcing from global market as well. In that case, the exchange of currencies would bring in, because when you carry interstate commerce, you realize that there are benefits that come in from the exchange rate. You may buy in dollars, you may buy in cedis, you may buy using the yen, all these currencies, and the exchange rates are not the same. That just the fact that we inter-exchange with this, it brings in some economic benefit. We may sell as well. You take what you would have sold here with the franc CFA, if you have to sell it in euros, you see that it will be different. The amount would increase. If you have to sell it using the US dollars, the British pound, the sterling, you see that it will be different. In that case, our economy would improve. We're talking about the use of internet in health services. It will be very enormous. You know, if there is one of those sectors that have or that is benefiting the advantages of advance in science and technology, it is the health sector. With the use of the internet, our health sector, our health, facilities will have a complete overhaul. Doctor was saying about the issue of education, but I look at it from the point of health. If doctors are able to do their research with the use of internet, it will minimize the cost where you can sit in your home now back here in Cameroon, and you carry out, online courses. You carry out further studies online with the use of internet. Doctors would be able to carry out research with, the latest,
to treat their patients from a distance.
Of course, that is another advantage with the use of internet, where you are able to carry out, distant, consultation with your patient, and you prescribe treatment from wherever they are. I was talking of the issue of sitting here and trying to find out, I have this case with me, what can I do to, you communicate with online other doctors who are out of here, who may be well placed, well educated, more than you, well trained, more than you, and in that case, they change the level of services that you render to your patients. We're talking about social well-being of our citizens as a whole. Once there are those who are growing now, most of them would not understand the meaning of letter writing, because letter writing has been shifted maybe practically to official document. But at the time we were growing, just communicating between my native village, Jakiri, and somebody here in Douala, you must wait for when somebody is going to Douala, and you write a letter, and it may take about 2-3 days, if not 1 week, even months, to get to a destination. But just with the help of internet, you sit now and you do real-time communication with somebody. You sit now and communicate with my mother in the village, and the message goes through. What she wanted or what I wanted goes through. But then, in those days, you have to keep writing. And you write and wait for the person. When he will get the letter, read and see another person coming to reply. So many things used to be, could not go. The level, that's what I mean by social well-being of our citizens. There is that development from that aspect. You get to measure the way people do things. I don't know if we had this coronavirus pandemic at the time when internet was not as it is now. The ways at which we are coping, I don't know it will be the same, because now you tend to measure what are people doing in East Africa, what are people doing in West Africa, what are they doing in South Africa, what are people doing in the United States of America. They are also asking to find out what are Africans doing. I remember I was talking with one friend in the US, and he was asking us, what are these chloroquine drugs that you are using, what are these herbs that you are using in Africa, how can we have some sent to us up there? That's the communication in so doing. That is social well-being development of the citizens. Vanessa, we're talking about personal development here as well, because when you sit on the internet, you find out, you get to enroll yourself into conferences that you build up your character, you build up your capabilities, you build up your, what you know. By so doing, it leads you into, greater output in your job site, greater output in your commerce, greater output in your relationship as well. Because there are other issues that are discussed concerning relationship. We have, the help of internet, all this bring together, and we are able to to bring about development. But then, like I was saying that I sit on the fence. There is another setback to it. Like, that's why I said that Africa existed before the coming of the white men. Vanessa, if we take the ongoing Anglophone crisis, when they started in 2016, 2017, without the help of the internet, this crisis would not have taken the proportion that we have today. All right,
it wouldn't have degenerated.
It wouldn't have, because today you sit and you see that, because I was watching live images that were coming in from the regions, from the northwest, from the southwest, from every locality. You see, people are already marching here. People are already marching in this locality. This is what and that is how the flame was, was degenerating. Now, today we are talking about the issue of people, decrying, condemning the atrocities that are going on in the two regions. It is because of the internet. I believe that some are committing some of these crimes or some of these atrocities because they see that it happened here, it took place here, and by so doing, it is instead having a negative impact in the crisis. But that's why the crisis is degenerating from one, point to another, Vanessa.
Thank you very much, Manga Venashu. So, Doctor, your reaction to the point of view where Manga Venashu thinks that it's as a result of this internet coverage that the crisis in these regions or superseded or degenerated. Your reaction to that?
I would partially agree with some of the things that Venatius has mentioned, because there is always two sides to most of the coins that we deal with in society, in this case the internet. There are several aspects we can discuss about the positive aspect of the internet. We should also be aware of the downside of the internet. I mean, in terms of the positive aspect, if one put it in terms of the driver for innovation, the internet is a major driver for innovation, finding ways of dealing with old problems, so finding completely new solutions. And there you can mention several examples that Venatius has already brought up. On the other hand, we also can look at the internet as a platform for accessing information, which I would also comment on as well. In the first part, which the internet is being used as a driver, one of the areas that some people might discuss that might have, or at least that has several different perspectives to it, is the automation and the use of artificial intelligence in the labor sector. Of course, there is a lot of questions as to how this might affect the fact that at the end, you still have somebody who needs a job. You still have somebody who needs to go to get employed, who need to be able to earn a salary and keep a family. But with the advent of automation, as people usually say it, you see that in Europe, the sizes of people working in shipyards have dramatically dropped down, but the number of cars that are being produced have risen excessively. This is partly thanks to advances in technology, and particularly the internet and computers. On the other hand, we also see that the management of things such as DNA sequencing opens up a lot other ethical element of it. So in the front of innovation, there are things that we can be happy about. There are things we are worried about. There are things that that we could definitely say produces positive impact. But then when it comes to information part of it, just the mass information, some sort of a democratic right, then there are two parts of it. As a platform, yes, the internet makes it possible to shine the spotlight on things that would have otherwise gone unnoticed. And there you can take the position that Venatius mentioned, but you could also take the opposite position and say, without the internet, a lot of bad things can happen in this world, and nobody will ever know it. And if we don't know it, there's a chance they would repeat again. So you could also take I also at the same time can acknowledge that the internet has contributed to some sort of radicalization, you would say. That is a fact. Some people have copied bad examples. But at the same time, the internet has also made it possible that some bad thing happening somewhere. How would we have known, for example, some of the aspect of, say, killings and so on that are going on in different parts of the world in the absence of the internet? That would never have been noticed. So in my opinion, I think that we should try to separate this part, but at the end of the day, we should be able to put the good versus the bad, and we can all come to an agreement that without good internet coverage, Africa would have difficulties accessing the rest of the world. They will have difficulties reaching out to each other. They will have difficulties driving the innovative capacity in the continent, which we know is quite deep. So in my opinion, the good or the positives outweigh the negatives.
doctor, the good or the positive outweighs the negative. In the second question, could this poor coverage be attributed to poverty or lack of political will? Dr. Gideon, you think that lack of political will stands as the first or the major reason or concern before poor coverage. So, do you feel that our African leaders, they do not just, or intentionally, they do not want to see the continent progress or develop?
I would not maybe perhaps jump into concluding that they do not want it. The question is if they are willing to do what it takes. Are they willing to give to democratize these tools and allow the youth to take these tools? When it comes to the part, I would start with the second part of it. I think that the challenges, and I would not say poverty, the challenges that we face back in Africa are in some ways, by some measures, a driving force for innovation. Suppose that we had the freedom to be able to do the things we want. We have access to, say, basic energy. I don't even say like we should have full-time energy. If we only increase the energy output in Cameroon by, say, 50%, that will be a major first step toward innovative solutions. You would see, like you've seen, I'll give you an example in Nigeria, where you've seen some kids who are doing videos. They are using Android because they cannot be able to do a longer video on an Android. They use this now as a way of just playing clips and then using those clips to create movies. And they have received quite a wide-ranging attention, including from Hollywood. Okay, that's innovative. They do their short clips, which means they have to be very precise, and they combine that into a movie. So those challenges to me are not what is retarding Africa. What is retarding Africa is the ability to democratize things and allow the potential that people have to grow and allow people to solve those problems without fear of being reprehended. I mean, take the case of Rwanda. Rwanda is not a very rich African country, but when it comes to internet coverage, I commend the effort of the Rwanda government and the developments that you see in Rwanda. So poverty, for me, is not really the problem. The problem is the conditions that are necessary to pull us out of this. Which,
thank you very much. So what could be some of those things that our leaders could adopt then as a way to empower the energy sector as far as the internet coverage is concerned?
Well, when it comes to that, again, like I said, if you set the right conditions for investment is unfortunately what many people might misleadingly suggest to you, that what is missing is the investment. I think what is missing is the conditions for the investment to take place. If we can start by, say, minimizing the corruption that we have in our country, which is unfortunately a major industry, that alone, this is a problem that is possible to fix. This is a problem that can be fixed by our leaders and by our administrators and by our politicians. That will create the environment for energy investments. Let's take the example, we talk about Africa leaping or leapfrogging some steps. We went from not using fixed phones to a mobile phone society. We could also go from not using grid electric systems to a distributed electric system where we rely on solar panels. These are incentives that can be created to generate energy locally. Fortunately, we have the right conditions for solar energy, which would be efficient, which would be very good for the environment, and which would even, in a way, could be seen as a cheaper cost alternative. But with the politics in place, is this possible? I mean, there are things the government can do.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You stay with us. We are having Dr. Leif from Sweden. Mangavenashu still on the fence, thinking that poor coverage could be attributed to poverty or the lack of political will, as well as it could not be.
Yes, Vanessa, I was looking at it from the point of poverty to say that the government may have the will. You see, the government may want to, improve the energy consumption, for example, like Doctor was saying, or improve the internet coverage of the country. But the facilities that we need to run this, are we able to? Buying it is one thing, maintaining it in place is another thing. I like what Doctor indicated here as a problem of corruption. That is one thing that is, killing our economy, killing our countries back home, Africa and Cameroon in particular. Because if you have to come out with such a project, like some other projects had been, you will see that people would forget the interest, the common interest, the common good, and go for their individualistic, instinct. That's why you will see that when they talk of constructing a road, somebody would, embezzle the funds. The road that will save a whole community, a whole nation, but somebody would prefer to embezzle the funds for himself, perhaps, and his family. Those are issues, when you put them together, you see that it has to do with political will, it has to do with poverty. We talk of maintaining, maybe when we talk about internet connection, we cannot forget the aspect or the place of a satellite station, perhaps. How many African countries can maintain a satellite that will maintain the speed of the internet that we may need for the development of our countries? That is why when I put together, I see that the political will is there. The government may want to do it, but the budget does not permit. Vanessa, when you look at it, most African countries are independent on papers, but economically speaking, financially speaking, they are not. I take, for example, those within the franc zone. You don't carry out any project in Cameroon without consulting francs. If France does not give you the go-ahead, you will not be able to do it. So these are things, when you put them together, you see that we may be an independent country, but financially speaking, we are not. So the government may want to do it, but for our budget does not permit us to go about doing it, Vanessa.
Thank you very much, Manga Venashu. So, Doctor, you have been very instrumental in several regional and pan-European efforts aimed at deploying computational tools towards its effective utilization. So, applying this knowledge or these skills back in Europe, how can that be deployed in Africa for us to better manage our internet coverage?
I would start, Vanessa, first by, if you don't mind, pushing a little back on the position of Venatius there. If you were going to ask me whether we out of two problems, one is poverty and the other one is the political will, as you put it. If you're going to solve or if you only had the luxury of solving one of those problems, I would say that the problem with the political will, if that one is solved, the poverty problem will follow suit, because without the environment to do business, it doesn't matter how much capital you have. If you're given billions to do business and the environment is not there, those billions will just end up doing nothing. Okay, so I leave that, and that's my position on that. But when it comes to how can I, in particular, or maybe how can we learn from the experiences that we witness in the West, and particularly in Europe or in Sweden, I would say that, again, we might circle back to the same problem. Before we are able to discuss the success rate of a high school class, we need to be able to maybe go back and look at the success rate of the primary school class. And there is the problem. Some of the key challenges of adopting solutions from the West, as you say, lies in the fact that those solutions are meant to address the problems of the West. And in order for us to be able to adopt those solutions, we will need to also have similar problems, so we'll need to look into the way and into our own challenges in our own society. And that's where, for me, the beginning is what the challenges we face as a nation, as a continent in Africa, do not necessarily match, they are not necessarily reflective or in the same way as the challenges that are faced in the Western societies. So the first step to be able to adopt solutions from the West is to be able to understand the problems that we want to solve. And I'll give you an example with that. A very simple example is the educational curriculum. This is where we need to start bringing changes to build an educational curriculum that reflects the society that we live in.
All right, we are sorry because of time constraint. We'll have to end the program at this level, but probably we are wishing that we'll have you next time to discuss how we could better the coverage system of internet in the African continent. That said, ladies and gentlemen, and to you, Manga Venashus, thank you. Let us have a break into the show. Thank you very much, you all, for your kind and keen attention. Stay tuned and see you on Monday, God willing.
Thank you, Venashus, and thank you, Vanessa.